Hello everyone. Today we'll be looking at Branded Dolls, a deck that combines two of the most relevant fusion engines in the games, Shaddolls and Branded. To start our lineup of monsters, we're going to have triple copies of Shaddoll Wendy. She can summon other Shaddolls from deck when flipped or sent to grave by card effect, which tends to happen a lot in Shaddoll builds. Triple copies of Shaddoll Squamata. When sent to grave by card effect, it can send any of the other Shaddolls from deck to grave. So for instance, your Wendy to then summon out, say, a Falco. Additionally, if flipped, it serves as a minor interruption by blowing up one of your opponent's monsters on field. Twin copies of Shaddoll Falco. Some people like to cut it down to lower amounts, but I like its ability to revive itself and other materials as a good extender for your fusion plays. Single copy of Nail Shaddoll Ariel. By herself, she doesn't actually do a whole lot, so I don't like playing more than one. However, she grants you the ability to hit your opponent's graveyard if needed when sent to grave by banishing 3 of their cards that are in the graveyard. And if flipped, say using your Rush Shaddoll Incarnation, she can then summon a banished Shaddoll monster, which then gives you another body on field to use for your combo. Shaddoll Dragon doesn't actually do a whole lot for the combo, but he's good removal. On flip, he can bounce one of your opponent's cards, and when sent to the grave by card effect, he can pop a spell or trap. So he's excellent utility. Single copy of Shaddoll Hedgehog. On flip, it can search you a Shaddoll spell or trap. On sent to graveyard, it can add you a Shaddoll monster from deck to hand. Twin copies of Fallen of Albaz. On normal or special summon, he can fusion summon using himself and monsters your opponent controls, which is an excellent aggro effect, but more importantly, he's required as material for all of the albaz fusions. A single copy of the Light Hex-Sealed Fusion, which can substitute itself for any given fusion material. Triple copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Excellent generic hand trap. Depending on how you like to play, you can swap this out for your preference in traps, kaijus, and staples. I quite like how she can shut down some decks, or at least slow down their combo, using her ability to stop summons from deck or searches. Triple copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and this time around, she's not as interchangeable as she normally would be, because on top of being able to blow up one of your opponent's cards on effect activation as a hand trap, you'll notice that her attribute is light, and this deck does not have a lot of light monsters of its own, which is an issue because one of the key extra deck monsters requires a light monster as material. So Ghost Ogre is a good material for your construct. You can, however, swap her out for, say, Effect Veiler, who's also light attribute, or Juzukiryu, the Star-Destroying Kaiju. On the topic of kaijus, Thunder King, the Lightning Strike Kaiju, 2 copies of. I quite like kaijus in this format because a lot of the modern decks are resilient to interruption, so even Ashes and Ghost Ogres don't necessarily stop them in their tracks. However, most of them have no countermeasure to kaiju. You'll also notice it's light attribute and therefore a potential material for your construct. Starting up our lineup of spells, triple copies of Branded Fusion. It's the best way to get your branded combo started. Fusion summons one of the albaz fusions using monsters from your hand, deck, or field as fusion material, and let's be real, you're going to be using the materials in the deck. That's common sense. It does lock you into fusion, but that's not a problem because in this build, we're only using fusion monsters. I know, right? No Link monsters in 2022. Triple copies of Allure of Darkness. As far as draw cards go, a lot of them have insane restrictions like, say, banishing 6 from extra deck or 10 from the top of your deck. However, Allure of Darkness is one of my favorite ones in dark decks because it allows you to draw 2 cards and then banish a dark from hand, and you'll notice that a good number of our Shaddoll main deck monsters, not to mention Fallen of Albaz, are dark. Two copies of Clear New World. Not playing at a 3 because you don't want to be seeing 2 of this in hand, and it isn't the best card despite being a good one. Now, the reason you'd play this is because it's an E-telly for any monster in the game, so long as you can blow up on field a monster with a different attribute and type and a higher level. So ideally, what I like to do with this is blow up the Squamata or any of the Albaz fusions in order to summon out Wendy from deck, or even the Hex Sealed, or blow up the Wendy and the Hex Sealed in order to summon, say, Falco. Twin copies of Shaddoll Fusion. Under normal circumstances, it's polymerization, but for Shaddolls. Under the circumstance that your opponent has an extra deck monster, and this is a going second build, so odds are they will, it allows you to fuse with materials directly from deck. Two copies of El Shaddoll Fusion. It's straight up just polymerization for Shaddoll monsters, but as a quick play, meaning that if you chain this to one of your opponent's effects that summon in order to bring out a Winda, you've stopped their combo in their tracks. Both Fusion and El Fusion have the Shaddoll name in their title, and can therefore be searched or milled off of the other cards in the archetype. Twin copies of Fusion Deployment. Allows you to reveal a fusion monster in the extra deck and special summon from hand or deck one of the materials whose name is specifically listed on it, and all of the Albaz fusions name Fallen of Albaz as their required material. So in other words, it's an E-telly for Fallen of Albaz. Not only does it get you access to the card, but on top of it, Albaz on summon can super poly, meaning that this is potentially an interruption or destruction effect. Single copy of Foolish Burial. It sends a monster from deck to grave, and all of your Shaddolls do things when sent to the grave, meaning that this is a great way to get the Shaddoll part of your combo started. Starting up our lineup of traps, two copies of Shaddoll Schism. It's a fusion trap, and it can do its thing continuously, so once every turn, including your opponent's turn, banishing the fusion materials from field or grave, and ideally you'll be banishing from grave, meaning that once you've summoned things with your other fusion spells, you can then summon with those same materials again. Additionally, it gives you the benefit of being able to send to graveyard a monster your opponent controls with the same attribute as the monster you summoned, which is a great interruption and can change the tide of a game. Single copy of Resh Shaddoll Incarnation. This is a brick. You really do not want to be seeing this in hand or using it as a trap in its own right. You'll be sending it to grave using the Shaddoll effects from, say, the Construct or the Squamata, and then it can banish itself and another Shaddoll card from grave to switch the position of one of your Shaddoll monsters to reap benefit out of their flip effects. For instance, Ariel, who can summon a banished monster, like the one you just banished with Resh Shaddoll Incarnation. Looking into our extra deck, triple copies of El Shaddoll Construct. It's a mini-boss in its own right for the fact that it can destroy anything by battle. because of its effect, and additionally, on summon, it can send a Shaddoll card from deck to grave, and upon leaving the field, it can return a Shaddoll spell or trap from grave to hand, making it a great way to gain advantage. Two copies of El Shaddoll Winda. It locks both players into only special summoning once per turn. It's a win condition, stops most combo decks dead in their tracks. Additionally, it cannot be destroyed by card effect, and when sent to grave, it gives you back one of your fusion spells or traps. Two copies of El Shaddoll Apkalone cannot be destroyed by battle, and when it's summoned, it can permanently negate the face-up card on the field's effects of any one of your opponent's cards. Or one of your own if for whatever reason you want to do that. I don't recommend it. When sent to grave, it can add you a Shaddoll card from deck to hand and then discard a card, which makes it a search for the entire archetype. Two copies of Albion the Branded Dragon. So it's ideally the first thing you'll be summoning off of your branded fusion. When summoned, it can then also fusion summon yet another fusion monster from extra deck, except another copy of itself, by banishing the materials mentioned on it from your hand, field, or grave. Then, during the end phase, if for whatever reason it was sent to the graveyard, say as a material or off a Mirror Jade's effect, it allows you to set a branded spell or trap directly from deck. Two copies of Lubline the Searing Dragon. On summon, you discard a card, and then you can fusion summon a level 8 or lower fusion monster from extra deck, except another copy of itself, by shuffling the materials mentioned on it into the deck from the monsters in field, graveyard, and face-up banish. So typically what you do is you use the Albion to banish the materials, and then use those same materials by shuffling them back in deck with the Lubline. And what you'd ideally be summoning off of it is Mirror Jade the Iceblade Dragon. She is a 3k beat stick with a non-targeting quick effect banish, which she does have to send one of the other albaz fusions to the graveyard from the extra deck to activate. Single copy of Sprind the Iron Dash Giant. Two reasons that I like to play this. Firstly, it can move itself to a free main monster zone and then blow up all the other face-up cards in its column. So what I like to do with this is to get one of the Shaddoll extra deck monsters in your extra monster zone, summon this, then move it to the zone behind it, blow that up, and then get the leaving the field benefit off of your Shaddoll monster as part of your combo. Otherwise, it's a good way to hit some of your opponent's things, and additionally, if sent to graveyard during the end phase, it can special summon a Fallen of Albaz from deck, and since on summon Fallen of Albaz Super Polys, in essence, it's a Super Poly during the end phase. For our final extra deck card, you've actually got two options depending on what you prefer. Predaplant Dragostapelia, you can summon that using either properly a fusion monster and a dark monster, or your Hex-Sealed fusion in any dark monster. It's a quick effect monster negate, which is generically good. Or, alternatively, Titaniclad the Ash Dragon, which gains attack equal to the combined original levels of whatever was used for its fusion summon. It's unaffected for the rest of this turn by monsters that are summoned from the extra deck, and it is a really big beat stick. So this is something you can use to end games a bit quicker if you find that you're lacking in damage on field. Like if your opponent manages to make an Ultimate Conductor Tyranno or a Dragon Maid Xiao stick. None of your other monsters can really beat over that except Construct, which can blow it up by battle. But Titaniclad can beat over that. So it's really a matter of negation versus beat stick. It's up to you. That is all. Have fun.